Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon edition, 120th running of the Boston Marathon. We're presented by Hyland's Leg Cramps, Stop the Cramps, Not Your Race, and the NormaTec Pulse Recovery System. Our guest, he is the commissioner of USA Today Sports Active Alliance, Mr. Bruce Revman, the commissioner.
How are you, Bob?
I don't think I've spoken to a commissioner before. This is awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm one of 6. I just wish I had their paycheck.
NBA, NFL, hockey, you could do it all. So tell me a little bit about the genesis of creating an alliance of events around the country. What led to that?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in the business of running and sports pretty much for 20 years. And the sport of running is a very disparate type of industry. You have a couple of major running properties like rock and roll,
sure,
obviously the World Marathon majors. But here in the United States, there are so many great marathons, anywhere from Hartford to Detroit, Indianapolis, Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And these are wonderful races. The problem these races are having, at least from a marketer standpoint, is they're just not big enough. When you start packaging these races together, however, they really represent some incredible benefits for the runners, for the races themselves, and also for marketers. So about 2 years ago, I did a business plan for USA Today Sports, and I said I had this crazy idea. And they said, what was it? I said, well, I think we can put a network together of some of these great races. And they said, okay, prove it. And about a year ago, we actually got the green light from the parent company of USA Today Sports, which is Gannett.
Right.
And the goal was really only to get about a dozen races. But now we have 16 of the country's finest marathons under the umbrella of the USA Today Sports Active Alliance.
I love that. And if you think about it, if you're a national advertiser, if you're a national client, to be able to say, okay, these are markets that I want to be in,
right,
and I can connect not with a cookie cutter event, but with the event in that market, Oklahoma City Marathon. These are events that are specific to that region. They were created there, and so they have that hometown feel and almost a neighborhood feel, but a national reach, right?
You nailed it. I mean, a lot of people ask me, are we going to change the races? The race directors were very candid about that. They said, we're delighted to be part of this if we can get in, but we don't want you to change what makes our race special.
Right.
These races in the communities that they're in, and they own the markets that they're in. The Indianapolis race, the city of Indianapolis embraces that race. It's their name is on it. St. Louis, Detroit. And they're large races. And imagine if you are a marketer and you want to go after the running community, we give these brands a one-stop shop. We have 300,000 runners in our network.
300,000 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
16 races. And that includes, most of these races, most of the marathons that we're in also have a half or other distances, which is important. And it really makes it a great, efficient buy for brands who want to get involved, want to reach the runners. But the main thing is we are not asking the races to do anything different than they're already doing, because they are the pros. They're the experts. They know what makes their race special for that community. And to get involved in that, to get in the way, we think would be a big mistake.
Sure.
What we're doing is complementing and enhancing, but fundamentally, we're not changing the way they operate, because we think that would be a big miss.
What type of challenges is the sport of running facing now? Because I've said to a number of folks, we are in an endurance entertainment marketplace. Running, triathlon, cycling, mountain biking, obstacle racing, color run, etc. Marathon is part and parcel of that,
Sure.
But at the same time, the numbers around the country have been a little flat when it comes to running and running with marathons and half marathons. How do we get those numbers to start going in the other direction?
Well, it's funny. Probably the biggest challenge that the race directors share with me and with our team is obviously the fact that registration is a challenge day in and day out.
Yes.
There's so many more options. There's so many more races. I think I was talking to the race director in Hartford, where she shared with me 10 years ago, in and around their race, which is held in October, they had very little competition in terms of half marathons or even other races. Now there's so much inventory. But it's not just in the running space, as you mentioned. There's there's things in the obstacle course racing.
Sure.
Spartan and Tough Mudder didn't exist.
Exactly.
What's interesting, though, is those folks who are into obstacle course racing or thematic runs are coming back to running more the traditional runs. But the challenge for marathons, big city marathons, is not so much their other races, but the marathons. It's hard to run a marathon. It takes a major commitment. It's obviously not as hard to run a half or you do a relay. So I think the real challenge for race directors is how do they get people who are embracing their race or their distances to bring in other people? How can they be ambassadors?
Yeah.
What can they do differently? It's very, very hard. The marathon is a flat growth business. But the other distances, the half marathon, still is growing, not at the pace it was.
Right.
But they've got to look at how to bring in everybody so that weekend that their race is going on, everybody has an opportunity to participate from a 5K, maybe a 1 mile, a relay, a 10K, half marathon. And those are the kinds of thinking that's kind of thinking that these race directors must have in order to thrive.
So when you're talking to the individual race directors in Oklahoma City or wherever, do you carve out categories and say, okay, because it seems like a lot of these guys would have a running shoe.
Yep.
And some of the endemic products connected. The real value to them would be bringing a non-endemic in
Right.
who wouldn't necessarily be involved with a 15,000 person or 20,000 person race, but if there's a collection of them, they would. Is that sort of the concept?
Yeah, and it's a inexact science coming out of the gate, because what we did at USA Today Sports, we looked at all the races and we tried to identify categories where we had relationships, not in the running space.
Right.
And for the most part, with our 16 races, the categories where we think there are opportunities, across the board, most of the races don't have a partner in that category.
Okay.
In one or two cases, they may. So the hope is that over time, in the next year or two, the categories that we have identified, where we think there's really great opportunity, that we will have that free and clear across the board. Now, we have identified a couple of brands in the running space that we think could also apply, but it may take a year or two before some of the races transition out of their current partnerships.
Sure.
But it's hard. I mean, that's what made this, that was the challenge going on when we started, but we're finding that the race partners also benefit from having the same partners from race to race to race. But it will take some time. But clearly, right now, the opportunity is in the non-endemic, the non-running categories that big brands want to go after the running space, and we are that great opportunity for them.
When you started traveling around and talking to some of these race directors, again, like you mentioned, these are the hometown event. And when you're talking to potential clients as well, they're still enamored with the sport of running and the numbers, right? They're still a small event that you're dealing with is 15 to 20,000 people. Right. Is that the attraction for the potential sponsors? Is just, hey, this is one-stop shopping for us. I could be going and talking to Oklahoma City and talking to these guys individually, but what a pain. I can be dealing with the USA Today Sports Alliance, and you're bringing them one-stop shopping. You commit to us, you're getting these 16 events, and we'll take it from there.
Right. You know, it's every partner, and in about 2-3 weeks, we're going to share our first 3 partners that we brought aboard. We're under contract with 3 of them. And they sign on for different reasons, but I think certainly the ability to bring scale and talk to one point of contact, us, is certainly beneficial. But as you know, the DNA and the profile of runners is very attractive to marketers.
Sure.
You know,
60% women, all the rest of it.
And they're really committed to the sport. They spend a lot of money. It's all about the journey. So it's not just what happens on the race weekend. It's how do these brands, how do these marketers, how can they talk to runners for the 2, 3, 4 months leading up to the race? But clearly, the other benefit we bring is as a media company, USA Today Sports has a lot of media. So in addition to be able to do the things like give brands access to the expo and all the things that you would get out of a race weekend, we really have the ability to use our media to make sure that any partner is really acknowledged across the country through USA Today Sports, And in local markets, they're able to activate through our media as well. So our secret sauce, we really think, and the thing that makes us so much different is the fact that we're a major media company, and this event series we're building fits so well in what we're trying to do. But at the end of the day, we're solving problems. We're solving challenges that the race directors have in terms of the national exposure that they obviously don't have if they're a regional race. We're able to provide some coverage. We're shooting all the races now. Have our sports photographers.
Oh, really?
There. Yeah. And we're also able to bring them partners that they otherwise wouldn't have access to, because local races don't know how to get to Fortune 100 companies.
No.
We deal with them every day.
Right.
And it's still not easy, but we have better access than obviously they would.
So when I look at the half marathon, and actually Ironman and half Ironman, what separates those from other events is the heads and beds factor, right?
Yep.
People travel to those events, and that's why the cities are enamored, because you're filling up hotels, rental cars, etc. There's lots of revenue for the cities. When you start looking at new distances, 10-miler, I mean, do you see that down the line where people will travel for a little less of a distance than the half marathon?
I think if the 10-mile distances or the shorter, the different distances are packaged with the marathon, absolutely, because a lot of people will go with a spouse, a friend, a mate who's running the marathon or the half.
Yes.
And they want to do something. I think the 10-mile distance is a emerging distance, and I think these race directors are looking at all the different options available to them to bring more people into the fold that weekend. If it's a 10-mile or if it's a relay, then they're going to come with the people that are running the half, that are running the full marathon, that are staying there for the weekend. And even people who live in the communities where their races are being held, oftentimes, and actually more times than not, because the races start so early, want to get there the day early, spend the night in the hotel, wake up near the start.
Yeah.
Because if a race starts at 7 o'clock and you live 30, 40 miles away, you're getting up at 3 in the morning, getting in your car at 4 to get there before the traffic hits. So it's really good for these cities to do as much as they can, race weekend, race day, get people there, put the heads in beds, and make it a whole event weekend.
What from doing the research before you launched? You're talking to race directors, you're talking to cities, you're talking to manufacturers and potential national advertisers. What surprised you from talking to those folks, and when you said, "Hey, this is something I want to do," where maybe they had challenges that you didn't know about beforehand?
Yeah, good question. I'll tell you the biggest surprise when we started sharing the size of the races that were in our alliance. I think most people thought that you've got the majors here in the United States, Chicago, New York, Boston, you've got LA, and you've got Marine Corps, and then they thought all these other races were 5,000 and 10,000 people.
Yes,
and that's not even close to what we have. Oklahoma City, all in 27,000 runners. Detroit, all in 27,000 runners. 2 weeks, our race in Illinois, they have 18 to 20,000 runners. These are big races.
Those are really big races.
And I think the numbers, more than anything else, the numbers surprised some of the companies that we were talking with, that I couldn't believe that, wow, these races are, maybe they're not as big as, certainly not as New York.
Right.
And yes, they have other distances, it's not just the marathon, but they're big, big events. And when you roll them all up, you get to have 280, 300,000 people. That's a big number. That's a big number. Surprise for a lot of companies.
When these companies are looking at the business of running, and they, like you said, they're able to pick out. You've got 16 races. Can they come in? Because I remember when we were doing Muddy Buddy, and when we went from 8 to 13 to 18 events, all of a sudden Columbia's going, listen, we're not in the Muddy Buddy business. We have to be at every one of these events. That becomes 18 weekends. We have to be very intimately involved with Muddy. That's a lot of travel. That's a lot of expense that you're adding for us. Has there been some thoughts of, hey, maybe we can carve out 8 events for people or 6 or 12 events so that it's not that impactful for the sponsors?
It's a big challenge, and it's the reason why right now we're staying at 16 events.
Yes.
It's very hard for any brand no matter what their budget is, to activate at all 16 events.
Exactly.
And you actually, the number you shared, I mean, 8 events is kind of our minimum threshold.
Yes.
And we recognize the fact that brands want to do it right, and they also know that, and I've been in the sponsorship business for many years, when a company pays a sponsorship fee, it's really for the privilege to pay probably twice as much in activation.
That's the beginning of the conversation.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we almost don't want companies that don't understand activation, because you can rest assured that a year after the deal is done, it won't be successful.
Right.
Because you need to activate. So we're looking at different programs. It's not ideal for us to have a company come in and cherry pick, but we also know there are some great brands we are talking with who have actually said, listen, we love to do all 16, but we just don't have the resources. We want to do 8, 9, or 10. We want to kill it.
Right.
Can we work with you? And we're looking at that and trying to come up with ways that could work for the races that would be involved, and also don't want to penalize the races that are not involved so they don't feel slighted. But that's a discussion we're having quite a bit right now.
Your history with being involved with brands for so long and being involved with marketing so long, can you share an activation story that you thought was really well done, where a company got involved in an event or an event series and really hit it out of the park with the way they activated?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm biased right here in Boston.
Yeah.
I think John Hancock, as a financial company, has created these stories that take people into the world of how people train and how
Yes.
they run. And listen, let's be honest. A financial sponsor of an event like this, it's not easy to translate and feel warm and fuzzy.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I will tell you, I think John Hancock really, really does it well. If you walk on the streets and you see the banners that are on the streets, and their campaigns of how to share inspiration and motivation, to me, I think they do it as well as anyone. They've been doing it a long time, and I'm impressed, because as a financial company, you don't always feel warm and fuzzy.
No.
But as a major sponsor here, as the major sponsor, I think they have really understood how to touch the nerves of runners and runner wannabes, probably better than anybody in the country.
Love that. Hey, Bruce, thanks for taking time and thanks for sharing. So, isn't there an ad breaking soon for?
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, if anybody is interested, if they go, our vanity URL is I Dare Me To. I Dare Me To. It takes you to our homepage, all the races, and in about 2 weeks, everybody will start seeing full-page ads in USA Today Sports with all of our new partners, also promoting the races. And over the next 9 to 10 months, we will be investing a lot of money in media promoting the Alliance. So if you don't know and don't see us now, don't worry, you will.
And I'm betting it helps getting in the door when you come in and say it's the USA Today Sports Alliance, because
Doesn't hurt.
That's having that blowtorch, which can really help get the message out, not just on the series, but on the sponsors.
You got it. Doesn't hurt having what I consider the preeminent sports name in all the United States associated with us. Doesn't hurt at all.
And we've had the opportunity to have the commissioner, Mr. Bruce Revman, with us. Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Bob.
Hold on, everybody. We will be right back.